Stewart Gandolf is one of the founding partners of Healthcare Success Strategies. And they are a national firm. Stewart represents the best of what I see in consultants. You know, there are a lot of folks you can bring into your practice, and a lot of folks will try to sell you stuff. But what good consultants do is they really take time to understand and listen. And then they draw on years and years and years and years of experience, and they have that solution right at hand. So he's going to talk a little bit about, you know, the down economy and some of the things that you can do to really make things work. So let me turn this over to Stewart.
Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure.
That was great. Thank you very much. Thank you for that nice introduction, Mark. That was great, and I appreciate that. So, you know, what's interesting on that note, just since he brought that up, is whenever we talk with a client, people call us up all the time. We're all over the internet. We're very visible, and they say things like, well, what should I do first? I've got a Medi-Spa. What should I do? What works? And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. What if a patient came to you and said, you know, I want to do, or they call up worse and they say, I want to do postcards. Like, well, okay, I guess we could do that. But that's like a patient coming in and self-diagnosing exactly what they need. And our approach is always more, let's stop and actually do an examination, a diagnosis, and then come up with a treatment plan, some recommendations that make sense in the context of the whole picture. And I also love the comment you were making earlier about being very careful to screen the patient. Likewise, in our business, you want to make sure you establish the right expectations. And we do that all the time. It's really critical. We want to have people that are successful, and you need to make sure you're on the proper footing from the very beginning. So today, in talking, what we're going to talk about today is something that's a lot of fun to talk about, and hopefully we haven't talked about this too much. I just sat in the earlier marketing session, and we're going to talk later on about other things to do with the recession, but I wanted to focus today on specifically the media and advertising specifically. Now, as I get into this, keep in mind that a couple things. Oh, by the way, I should quick little bit about my background in addition to what Mark said. Oh, by the way, those of you, anybody recognize the obscure reference there with the hat? Okay, there's some Lord of the Rings fans out there. Anyway, so I really have done this for years. I've worked with 1,500 clients personally. I've worked with big ad agencies, multi-billion-dollar companies. We have relationships with national companies in this space. So we've done this a lot. We write a lot. We speak a lot. And my company is a full-service marketing agency, meaning we do not just what I'm talking to you today about advertising, but we do consulting on internal marketing, external marketing, professional referral marketing, internet marketing, et cetera. But today I want to focus on the advertising. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about you. Does it sound like a California thing? Let's talk about you. And what I want to do is just get by a show of hands, and I know by now you're tired, but the show of hands will really help me and my fellow panelists get a good sense of who's in the audience so I can frame my talk in the way that's most relevant to you. So first of all, just by show of hands, how many of you are a dermatology-based practice that has a Medi-Spa or in cosmetics? Okay. How about plastic surgery? Got it. Primary care, OB-GYN? Fair number of those. Very good. Any entrepreneurs where they're not really tied to a specific medical practice? Okay, good. How many practice owners in the room? Okay. Staff? Excellent. Okay, so good. We've got great both points of view. Okay, here's really important. Where do you think the recession is going? Okay, because I have my own input, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. So where do you think the recession is going? How many say, what recession? We're doing great. We've always been doing great. We never noticed recession at all. Ooh, very few. A couple. How many of you feel like happy days are here? Again, anybody feel like that? Okay, how many of you feel like we're still in it? Okay. All right. And then finally, just real quickly, how many of you are advertising anything more than a little bit on the internet or yellow pages? How many of you are doing TV, radio, newspapers? Okay, good. Got it. All right, so I want to try to get something for everybody in my presentation today. So one of the key things I want you to keep in mind is that really nobody knows where things are going in terms of the recession. And what's amazing about this, I actually just did a DVD on this very topic. It's funny, you hear nothing but gloom and doom before maybe March, and now you hear nothing but great stuff. Like just on Friday, I saw on Yahoo News, which is where I get most of my news these days because I'm so busy, it said, unemployment less than expected. And then you read the article, if you get past the headline, unemployment at a record, all-time high. So you have to be a little careful when you know, everybody's talking about these green shoots, and I understand why, because we all talk about how terrible things are. It gets terrible by, definition. Doesn't that make sense? So if we all think gloomy, it gets even gloomier. So I'd be careful for thinking about how fast this is going to come and go. Nobody really knows. I happen to follow some people like Nouriel Roubini, who saved me a bundle in the stock market by selling out earlier, and Harry Dent and people like that. So I recommend you really study this because it will impact your practice. Also keep in mind that we're going to have a wide variety of topics today in our talk about varying budgets. Some of you will have very large budgets. Some of you will have very small budgets. And I'll try to make my talk relevant to each of you. And finally, keep in mind that media is its own specialty. One of the things that I always find when working with practices and spas and so forth is everybody says, oh, I've got a marketing person, or I want a marketing person. And my answer is, whoa, 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 whoa. Before we talk about that, what exactly does that mean? Are they a publicist? In other words, do they get you free press? Are they a media planner buyer? Do they do internet marketing? Oh, what kind of internet marketing? Search engine optimization or pay-per-click marketing? Or website design? Are they an art? Do you understand what I mean? There's lots of different specialties here. Media is its own specialty, and we'll focus on that. Okay, let's talk about the advertising landscape today. Speaking of specialists, we have a media specialist we work with for the actual larger advertising campaigns. And I spoke with him to get his insights on, because he's on the pulse of the marketplace. I mean, I'm out speaking and writing and doing everything else. He's on this pulse of what's going on. One of the key things to keep in mind is the local advertising scene is changing tremendously. Auto dealers and some of the other big advertisers historically locally, like furniture stores, direct response attorneys, a lot of these guys and gals are cutting way back. And the auto dealers in particular, the bread and butter of local advertising, have often disappeared altogether. They're gone from the marketplace. So what do you guys think that makes? What does that help you or hurt you? It helps. It's a brand new opportunity because now those very difficult to work with media outlets are a whole lot more negotiable before. Remember before you got delegated to the lowest guy on the totem pole when you called and they said, here's your rate card. Sorry, it's non-negotiable. Those days are gone, at least for now. We don't know when they'll come back. But right now, there is a window of opportunity for us. On top of that, newspapers are dying, and this is not news. I mean, I wrote a extra credit paper in 1980 for my undergrad marketing professor about the likely death of newspapers. It wasn't that I was that smart. I happened to work for a newspaper. It was pretty obvious that this whole model would change as the electronic world would take over. So, and huge titles are gone now, and others are in trouble. I watch Charlie Rose a lot, and in the last couple of weeks, he's interviewed people from the New York Times and Newsweek, and they're talking about the business model for them going forward. New York Times? Newsweek? How's your local paper faring, do you think, in the scheme of things? So these are the times they are changing. The internet is also changing everything because now you guys have alternatives. You have a great alternative to the local radio guy or gal, and so that's changing everything as well. Healthcare competition is rising. I sat on a panel at the Foundation for Facial Plastic Surgery, I don't know how many years ago. We were talking about competition. And one of the things I brought up when I was there was the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, say that 20% of practices will get 80% of the work. And this is true in a lot of ways and a lot of factors, and it's just real. So it turns out 20% of insurance sales are made by, 80% of insurance sales, for example, are made by 20% of the salesmen. 20% of the beer drinkers in America consume 80% of the beer. This model, I don't know why it works, but it's pervasive. It's called the Pareto principle if you need to look it up. So the point is that competition is increasing, and now we're seeing medical practices and hospitals and so forth advertising and going out. They want to be in that top 20%, far more than we saw before. That old boys gentlemen's club thing is gone. It's just gone. Okay, so now what I've also found is the media now are targeting you. We get calls all the time. Again, we're all over the internet. So we get not infrequently someone saying, hey, we're a media outlet. Our next juicy target is doctors. They don't know how to negotiate with us. They're all over the place. So they're targeting you now because they look at you as the replacement income or to replace all the income they've lost from the dealerships and so forth. So as a result of all this, who is negotiating these days? Well, it turns out that broadcast TV and newspapers are a lot more negotiable than they used to be. It turned out that back in the old days, newspapers weren't negotiable at all. They're far more negotiable these days. And broadcast TV, think about it. From their point of view, what happens if they don't sell a spot? What happens? They get zero revenue. Zero. So it's opportunity cost wasted. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Radio, cable, TV, those are also more negotiable than they used to be. Pay-per-click advertising isn't specifically negotiable. In other words, you're not going to negotiate with Google. But what's happening is, up until now, there's been a lot of dumb money chasing internet marketing. It seems so obvious. Oh, I'll just pay Google lots of money to be on the first page with pay-per-click advertising. Well, what happened is everybody bid it up so fast that it no longer became cost-effective. At $10 a click, you know, not everybody who clicks that ad is going to call you. It's really easy for the marketplace to no longer make economic sense. Well, with the recessions, many of your colleagues are doing the duck and cover technique, which is exactly the wrong technique, by the way. Again, I just did this DVD about the recession. One of the key points is that while everybody else ducks and covers, this is a tremendous opportunity for you. Walmart is a classic business case example of this. And during the last recession, everybody else was ducking for cover. People tend to just hide during recessions. Walmart expanded aggressively. And they went from I'm sorry, not Walmart, Walgreens, I apologize, Walgreens. So while everybody else was going for duck and cover, Walgreens is now a dominant player in many marketplaces because they took real action during the slow times. You'll see less negotiation, and again, this is market by market. Everybody's different. I know there's exceptions, but in general, the shoppers, things like Advo and Clipper Magazine, those kinds of things are less negotiable. Yellow Pages have not woken up yet. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And local magazines also tend to be less negotiable. Okay, so how do we buy advertising? Okay, my hero growing up, Darren Stevens. So how do we buy advertising? And before I go into the details of this, keep in mind that, again, I really believe in internal marketing. We teach this all the time. We do, you know, internal marketing is the best way to go, clearly. But the problem is that after a while, you've asked all those patients for referrals. You've done all your great stuff. And so if you really want to grow, then we take a look at advertising. And one of the advantages of advertising is, number one, it's scalable. Does everybody understand what that means? In other words, if you find something that works, you can sort of double down. It's a good term for here where we are. You can invest more. So what we want to invest more in marketing that's working. And it's a system. And once you do it right, it's passive. It doesn't require the staff person to be asking for referrals. You know how hard that is in the day-to-day reality for you guys? Especially a lot of you that raised your hands are in primary care. This is culture shock for your staff. They're not even used to this. And I'm sure other people have talked this weekend about how to handle that. So in any event, once you've got past your patient base, advertising is something that may be worth exploring for your practice. So in doing this, I wanted to make this easy, sort of advertising 101. If you're going to do this, and some of you I know, I'm sure, are spending, well, how many of you are spending more than $10,000 a month on advertising, really aggressively? Okay, good. So we have some people that are doing that. How about more, or closer to $5,000? How about $500 a month? How about zero? Okay, so good. Or we have some people who are advertising that. Okay, so when we do any more advertising plan, not just in healthcare, but anyway, we have to start with our objectives. Now, I mentioned I used to work with J. Walter Thompson. My spokesperson was Cher, and Sheena Easton and Heather Locklear. So we had it was an $80 million budget. So we were talking more about, rating points and share of mind. We were matching our competitors. For a private practice level budget, even if you're spending $10,000 a month or more, it seems like this much money. And it is to us as individuals. But compared to IBM, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Apple, it's like this. So it's hard for us to worry about things like share of mind and these very fuzzy kind of things. And oh, by the way, please, no ego buys. Okay, that's a game you can't win. Well, my competitor's advertising a full page ad. I should do a page and a half. That's the road to doom. So what I really want you to think about is what's our return on investment goal? And again, we want to think about what reasonable return on investments are. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, those are very good. If you spend $1, you make $4 back, you're building your base, you're increasing your reputation. What's a reasonable return on investment goal? And at least that way you have an acid test to decide whether this is all making sense, whether everything we're doing is working or not. So now that you have a budget in mind, now you've got to actually start talking to people. But when I ask typically a Medi-Spa owner, for example, who's your target audience? Upscale women. Okay, we can do that. But the problem is that media isn't bought that way. Media is, ages 35 to 44, white, has 2-income households. That's how you buy media.